an order from the governor,
Yeah.
your rights are suspended.
We've seen a lot of folks who are saying they're not doing that. They're here, they're on the Capitol steps, staging a more traditional protest here in front of the Capitol building in Lansing.
The police here have resorted to physical punishments for those who breach it.
Da sie der mehrfachen Aufforderung, sich nach Hause zu begeben, nicht nachgekommen sind, wird die Polizei ihre Identität feststellen und Strafanzeigen fertigen. Folgen Sie den Anweisungen der Polizei.
Hello YouTube family, it is me, Miss Dana Ashley. Today I want to show you a compilation of clips that has given you a view of this lockdown that the mainstream will never show you. Perhaps some of you have already noticed that the talking head Fauci has quietly admitted in a scientific paper that the death rates that they originally claimed justified the actions we're seeing now actually are on par with annual flu statistics. And perhaps some of you saw that the Chinese study that originally justified the harsh measures the world has since taken was retracted. And they have released a new study that puts a completely different contagion rate on record. And it is a fraction of the original one stated. Maybe if you're able to still keep watching, you've noticed that the rollout of the millions of deaths they originally predicted has gone back to 80,000 and now even below 60,000, which again is on par with annual flu death statistics. So if you are paying attention in these ways, perhaps you're thinking, what is going on? Well, what if I were to tell you that there was a document released 10 years ago that completely foretold this entire scenario we are finding ourselves living in? What if I told you that that same document not only foretold the event, but its devastating economic after effects? Would you want to know the stated goal of the document, as well as the stated vision of the people who are behind it? I believe the entire world deserves to know, as well as who benefits from its implementation, because it is not we, the people. So, we will get into this document in depth in just a bit, but first, let's take a broader view and look at how this scenario's rollout has already begun all over the world.
3 weeks on now, we're starting to see that the vast majority of the public here in Northamptonshire are complying. Sadly though, we have a small number of people who are persistently and consistently disobeying the law, and so that period of grace is over. This means for some people fixed penalty notices. It means for some people going to court. And it also means for some people getting a criminal record. So we will not at this stage be setting up roadblocks. We will not at this stage be starting to marshal supermarkets and checking the items in baskets and trolleys to see whether it's a legitimate, necessary item. But again, be under no illusion, if people do not heed the warnings and the pleas that I'm making today, we will start to do that.
As well in the UK, they are now using drones to ensure people don't drive their cars to areas where they'd prefer to take their daily walk. That would be deemed non-essential.
The most important thing is that people do, just take that one piece of exercise a day, limit the reasons for going out to ideally no more than a weekly shop. The main thing is to ask people to, stay home. If you are taking that exercise, take the exercise, if possible, close to home.
Meanwhile, in Berlin, the people of Germany, perhaps because of the nightmare still fresh in their grandparents' memories, are protesting these obvious breaches to their constitutional rights, and even the elderly are facing arrests as a result. Oh, and by the way, their media is covering none of this. It is only showing them the same fear the virus media that we're getting here in America. This was sent to me from a subscriber.
Wir wollen lediglich mit Ihnen eine Identitätsfeststellung. Ihr Eindämmungsgesetz macht ihr das nur. Sehen Sie den Rubikon? Habt ihr mal ein Eid aufs Grundgesetz geschworen, als ihr den aktiven Dienst übernommen wurdet? So. Habt ihr das? Und jetzt tretet ihr es mit den Füßen. Nichts anderes macht ihr.
Gehen Sie bitte ein Stück zurück. Gehen Sie bitte zurück.
Gehen Sie mal bitte ein Stück zurück.
Achtung! Es folgt ein wichtiger Hinweis der Polizei. Ich richte mich an die Personen im Bereich Weidinger Straße und Rosa-Luxemburg-Straße. Durch die Eindämmungsverordnung des Senates von Berlin ist ein Zusammentreffen von mehr als 2 Personen untersagt. Da sie der mehrfachen Aufforderung, sich nach Hause zu begeben, nicht nachgekommen sind, wird die Polizei ihre Identität feststellen und Strafanzeigen fertigen. Folgen Sie den Anweisungen der Polizei. Es ist 15:57 Uhr, Ende der Durchsage.
Eine Frage, warum sind Sie heute hier?
Wegen der Außerkraftsetzung der demokratischen Verhältnisse. Unser Grundgesetz wird hier massiv eingeschränkt. Allein die Tatsache, dass wir uns nicht mehr versammeln dürfen. Sie sehen ja, wie wenig Menschen hier sind, wie wenig Menschen sich überhaupt trauen, in so einer Situation ihren Mund aufzumachen. Ich sage Ihnen, ein Mundschutz ist kein Maulkorb.
Wird die Polizei ihre Identität feststellen?
Nein, nicht weil sie auf diesem Platz stehen, sondern weil viele Menschen zusammenkommen, die Ausbreitung eines Virus, die Gefahr der Ausbreitung eines Virus dasteht. Deswegen schränken wir ein wenig.
Mikrobiologin. Sie tragen da eine Maske. Denken Sie wirklich, dass ein Virus Sie schützen würde davor?
Weiß ich, dass es mich nicht schützen würde.
Denken Sie wirklich, dass die Stoffe, die
Aber
Sie da einatmen, gut für Ihre Gesundheit sind?
Denken Sie wirklich, dass eine Diskussion jetzt gerade mit...
Das Virus, ich bin Mikrobiologin.
Ja.
Ja, ich beschäftige mich mit Parasiten, mit Zellbiologie. Das ist mein Hauptberuf. Ja, und ich verstehe nicht, warum hier ein Szenario veranstaltet wird über etwas, das gar nicht so stattfinden kann, wie es in den Medien verbreitet wird.
Nochmal ja oder nein? Eure Kinder können ja auch nicht in die Schule gehen.
Hören Sie mal auf, Sie sind hier in der Lage, Sie können uns nicht sagen, wo wir hin.
Wir sind verloren. Wenn Sie jetzt hier auch noch ein Grundgesetz kaputt machen, dann sind wir sowieso ganz unten durch. Wir sind sowieso der Schauplatz der Auseinandersetzung zwischen Amerika und Russland.
Ganz kurz, wenn Sie jetzt an der Dame ziehen, machen Sie eine Gefangenenbefreiung, kommen Sie mit. Lassen Sie bitte los, halten Sie Abstände ein. Die Dame wird jetzt mit einer Ordnungswidrigkeit mitgenommen.
Das aber einmal zu wir haben nur
At the behest of the World Health Organization, Africa has been warned to act now to take measures to contain the virus. They have begun enforcing their COVID curfew more strictly with a measure of tear gas. The crowds of people had gathered to catch the last ferries out of Mombasa.
Well, police coast to coast will again raid parks, beaches and public spaces today, urging Australians to follow strict social distancing rules or face massive fines. Yeah. You can go to a park and you can exercise. So I can go and I can run laps, I can do push-ups and all. But we saw pictures yesterday and there was one in particular of a young couple with a newborn baby sitting on a park bench and they're being told to move on. What is allowed and what isn't allowed?
The reality is if you go out to exercise, then go and do your exercise, then go home.
So family, yesterday I went down to the park with the kids and I sat on the grass and let, the 1-year-old crawl around and the 3-year-old sort of run around me. Under these new rules, I'm not allowed to do that, is that right?
If everyone went down to the park at the same time, Ali, it becomes a complicating factor that, do the kids have it or do you have it without symptoms and are you spreading it to someone else who comes in contact with your kids?
Here's some footage from India during their 3-week quarantine with incredibly harsh enforcement.
Police here have resorted to physical punishments for those who breach it. Footage has emerged from Mumbai of them beating motorists with their batons in multiple locations. At one point, police are seen ordering locals to do squats. And they're not the only ones given humiliating public punishments. Some were made to do press-ups at the side of the street. This is a country of 1.3 billion people. It may have only a little over 500 confirmed cases.
Did you hear that? He just said only 500 cases in 1.3 billion people, not even 500 dying. 500 cases, which we already know most of them are mild. So we're talking about, please, I suck at math, but it's something like 0.000000038 or something? And they're treating people like this? For their own good, right? Mm-hmm.
And a very low death toll compared to other countries. But it fears it could follow China, Italy and Spain. Whether the methods police here are using to stop that from happening are the right ones is another matter altogether.
Dozens of protesters took to the streets of Sao Paulo to protest the social distancing measures imposed by the governor of Sao Paulo and their inevitable devastation to small businesses and forced unemployment. Small businesses like mine are being closed, thousands of companies and millions are unemployed. He is committing a crime against small and medium-sized businesses in São Paulo and all the population of São Paulo. Meanwhile, Dubai has implemented a very strict lockdown system in which people have to apply to go outside regardless of the reason. They are forbidden outdoor exercise, and people need police permission to buy groceries, medicine, to go to the doctor, or even to leave home for an emergency.
We have joined the police patrol in the townships. Wherever we go, everyone runs away because they know they shouldn't be on the streets and they're afraid. The officers on duty seem anxious. They admit they can hardly keep these huge areas under control. The enforcement of the lockdown is anything but systematic. It appears random. This man couldn't get away fast enough.
We're supposed to be in his house. This is a lockdown, and you don't have any reason to be outside.
He's been fined for 1,500 rand, about 80 euros.
You have that kind of money?
No, I'm not working. That's why I was going to my brother to take a food.
The man says that during the arrest he was kicked and beaten by the police behind the house. We couldn't verify this from our position. A few blocks away, we meet a young woman who doesn't want to show her face. She's afraid she'll be recognized. But she does want to show what the police did to her just for being on the street. She says several officers stormed into her house and attacked her with sticks and whips, and all this in front of her daughter.
It's actually traumatizing because I've never been beaten up like that.
The police defend their harsh action in the townships.
If they don't listen, then unfortunately those things happen. I'm not saying it's right, and in some communities that's all the members of the public understand.
Police fear the tension in the townships will worsen the longer the lockdown stays in effect.
Вернусь именно на высокий уровень риска. Ситуация в целом находится под контролем.
Moscow is using facial recognition to enforce their quarantine by using high-tech surveillance where they use facial recognition technology. Cameras are monitored from a purpose-built CV-19 control center where images and personal data of those under quarantine are put into a database so that they can be recognized by the cameras, and monitor social media for fake news on the CV-19. Here's an operative dashboard where we can see the statistics. All the information we gathered is shown here. Contacts, email, telephone, employer, and so on. 95% of these people have been identified and their location is determined. Then we continue working with them. Russia is not the only country to enlist high-tech surveillance to battle this CV pandemic. South Korea. They too have been using surveillance cameras, mobile phone location data, and credit card records. Taiwan is also using phone location tracking to ensure quarantine people stay in their home. And in Hong Kong, those under quarantine are being made to wear location tracking wristbands.
On the north side of the State House, by the entrance to the stateroom, the chants of protesters could be heard loud and clear.
Open Ohio now!
One of those voices outside the State House belongs to Jennifer Franz.
We feel like the virus is less of a danger to us than our rights being stripped from us.
She joined a few dozen protesters Thursday, many holding signs, some wearing masks, as they criticized the state's response to the COVID-19 pandemic.
There's just people who, again, like me, feel like their constitutional rights have been violated.
Some say they're now out of jobs, upset they did not have input on what businesses are essential or not.
I'm very appalled at the fact that they've done these things with the thought that, number one, it's okay, and number two, that they even are allowed to do these things.
Update: during the finishing touches of this video, April 15th, thousands in Michigan have also descended upon their capital to protest their loss of rights in this lockdown.
You're looking live at our state capitol, surrounded by protesters this noon. Those descending on Lansing are upset with the governor's executive orders that have forced many businesses to close. Political reporter Rick Albin kicks off our team coverage from Lansing right now. Rick?
Well, Emily, there are a lot of cars, as you can tell, and they have been here since very early this morning. By 11 o'clock this morning, the place was filled. All these lanes were filled with cars. I've seen no police presence to move them along. All of this in response to the governor's orders for people to stay at home.
So unless it's a life-sustaining activity, we're asking people to stay home.
And there are all kinds of signs on cars that talk about liberty and being locked down and quarantined and I need to work. So the governor, while she wants people to stay at home, is looking out the window if she's in her office at this crowd of people who have come out here today to protest those very orders.
Okay, Rick. Thank you for that. Leon, what are you seeing?
The Capitol steps, the scene of a protest. The whole idea here was that folks would stay in their car and participate in this gridlock, but we've seen a lot of folks who are saying they're not doing that. They're here, they're on the Capitol steps, staging a more traditional protest here in front of the Capitol building in Lansing. I want to show you one of the larger displays here, a huge sign that is out in the Capitol lawn. It says security without liberty is called prison. And we're going to walk up here and give you an idea of the feel some of these people have. First of all, tell us your name and what brought you out here.
My name is Joseph Dixon, and I came out here to support the Michigan businesses and stand up for the rights of our fellow Michiganders. We believe that the governor has overreached and overstepped her rights with our freedoms.
Are you concerned about this virus?
I was in the beginning until I've done my research and found out the realities and the media's overreach on it, and that it's not as serious as they made it out to be, and that's why I am here. I feel that they are overreaching, overreacting, and crushing our small businesses, crushing our economy.
I see you're wearing a mask, so you appear to have some level of concern.
Well, I have concern. I have just common courtesy for people, and I do have concern and respect for everybody.
What would you say to the governor if she's listening right now?
I would say, Governor, open our economy on May 1st and respect our rights and our freedoms.
All right, that's a little bit of the sentiment we're hearing here. A lot of these folks, hundreds of people who are gathered here on the Capitol steps. A number of them have signs. One here in the foreground says, "Recall Whitmer now." We see a number of American flags. Folks certainly having a political feeling that goes associated with this situation. It's quite the sight here on the Capitol steps. It's cold, it has been snowy, but it's not tempered down the spirit and the feeling that these folks have about letting their voices be heard in opposition to the governor's executive orders connected to the coronavirus.
Some have decided that what has been taken away from them makes protest worth it, like this surfer in Southern California.
I am out here protesting the fact that I cannot get in the water by myself, stay away from people, enjoy the ocean, surf, dive, and swim. No, I can't go catch a wave. No, that's illegal. I will get a $1,000 fine or go to jail.
But the largest share are pastors like these who have attempted to hold drive-in churches to be available for the needs of their congregation during a time of widespread fear and uncertainty. All the while, the bought and paid for media, of course, is portraying them solely as an endangerment to society.
We don't believe a virus suspends the First Amendment, and the First Amendment not only protects the church, but it protects the press.
The pastor from this church had cleared with an attorney his ability to have a drive-in church, but the police sent nearly 20 cars to stop it and let him know the new laws of the land didn't include the First Amendment.
City of Greenville on a church property. They got more police here than they do on the corner of Nelson Street. I'm a pastor of a local New Testament church. Look at all the police cars. They heard through the grapevine we're having service at 6:30. I'm a good citizen. Ain't breaking no law, ain't selling no drugs. I'm just preaching the word of God. And look at all these police cars here.
We'd like to give you an official warning.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So if there is a driving,
we're gonna get tickets.
We'll issue citations.
Yes, sir.
So I'd like to give you a formal warning.
Yes, sir.
And we'll allow if you do have members come, we will allow them to leave before they're cited.
Yes, sir.
If they decide not to, is when they will be dismissed.
Yes, sir.
An order from the governor.
Yeah.
Your right was suspended.
No, our right don't come from authority. It comes from the Bible. So the authority does not have the right over the Constitution. We talking the Constitutional law, the First, Second Amendment. Mayor Eric Simmons can't take it away, nor the police officer. It can't.
Not the military, that's military law.
No, it can't. So y'all, this is happening in Greenville, Mississippi, the poorest part of the United States of America. More killing in Greenville, more drugs on the corner, and look where the police officer at. If y'all would have told me this, that I would experience this as a pastor trying to preach the gospel, I wouldn't believe y'all. If y'all don't wake up, America, the police told me our freedom can be revoked. He said he don't care what the Constitution say. He don't care about the First and Second Amendment. I'm talking, when you say you don't care about what the Constitution say, you are violating the law of the land yourself. Police officers messing with the church. What have happened to America?
The last thing I want to do is stir up any kind of fear for people about the state of the world, but we need to be willing to look at what's happening in a realistic viewpoint, square in the face, in order to prepare, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually, especially. Now, the good thing about the power-drunk people who control nations is that they tend to admit their plans openly. One, because they think we're all too dumb and compromised to figure it out. And two, I think because this is actually a spiritual war, ultimately, and they're required to tell us. But regarding their open admittance of their plans, we're going to go ahead and look at that document that was released 10 years ago, 2010, that openly states different scenarios that could feasibly lead to the technologically controlled world that they want to see become reality. They, in this case, are those behind the Rockefeller Foundation, which, by the way, is the same group that seeded not only the United Nations, but as well the World Health Organization. That name sound familiar? Yeah, that same group who is right now responsible for advising governments, the same group who is helping shape the recommendations and rules that you, right now, are being forced to obey. The same group that Trump was apparently listening to when he signed an executive order on Friday, March the 13th. That essentially handed this country over to FEMA on a platter. That's another story. Let's get back to this document. This document is called Scenarios for the Future of Technology and International Development. At the moment, it is available online. If you just put that phrase in along with PDF, you can download it. The stated purpose of the document was to explore the many ways in which technology and development could co-evolve. They claim in order to, quote, address a wide range of developmental challenges from climate change, healthcare, agriculture to housing, transportation, and education. Oh, is that all? As an aside, when you understand that this organization's original founder, Rockefeller, also benefited most from the big oil monopoly that systematically destroyed not only environments, but as well other forms of healthcare that did not utilize their patented petrol-based pharma products, I do hope you can understand the irony of them now claiming they want to fix the healthcare and climate, but more on that later. The scenarios they present in this document would bring about what they understand to be the very important global, political, and economic alignment that they say will be for the good of us all. Well, let's take a look and see if we, the people, agree with that. The first scenario they explore is called lockstep. You will find this on page 18 of this document. It elaborates much further on the scenario that they explore in order to know what the future might look and feel like, as they say. Now, they describe this scenario in past tense, but do not be deceived. Remember, this was released in 2010. Here are some excerpts. Now, the subtitle to the whole lockstep scenario that they describe says, "A world of tighter, top-down government control and more authoritarian leadership." How does my compilation back that up so far? With limited innovation and growing citizen pushback. So understand that they know that the citizen pushback is what they will be instigating. They're very well aware of that. Remember, this was written in 2010. It says, "The pandemic that the world had been anticipating for years finally hit. Unlike 2009's H1N1, it was extremely virulent and deadly. Even the most pandemic-prepared nations were quickly overwhelmed. The pandemic also had a deadly effect on economies." Now remember, why is it having an economic impact? Why? Is it from the virus itself that we now know is on par with the seasonal influenza? Or is it because of the rules that very organization has imposed as a result of what they said needed to happen? It's a very important point. It says it had a deadly effect on economies. This is what they wanted. International mobility of both people and goods screeched to a halt, debilitating industries like tourism, breaking global supply chains. Food supply chains, anyone perhaps? Even locally, normally bustling shops and office buildings sat empty for months, devoid of both employees and customers. It blanketed the planet, they say. Even in developed countries, containment was a challenge, right? That's how they want to portray it in the media that they also control. However, a few countries did far better. China in particular. The Chinese government quick imposition and enforcement of mandatory quarantine for all citizens, as well as its instant and near hermetic sealing off of all borders, saved millions of lives, they say, stopping the spread of the virus far earlier than in other countries. Says China's government was not the only one that took extreme measures to protect its citizens from risk and exposure. During the pandemic, national leaders around the world flexed their authority and imposed airtight rules and restrictions, from the mandatory wearing of face masks to body temperature checks at the entries to communal spaces like train stations and supermarkets. Are we seeing this? Yeah, absolutely. Even after the pandemic faded, y'all, listen to this. This more authoritarian control and oversight of citizens and their activities stuck and even intensified. Leaders around the world took a firmer grip on power. Again, this is what they want to see happen. At first, the notion of a more controlled world gained wide acceptance and approval. Right here in America, I would agree. Citizens willingly gave up some of their sovereignty and their privacy, even eager for top-down direction and oversight, and national leaders had more latitude to impose order in the ways they saw fit. In developed countries, this heightened oversight took many forms. Biometric ID for all citizens, for example, and tighter regulation of key industries. Keep your eye on the food, guys, because that's the one they really want to take down, in my opinion. Tighter regulation of key industries was deemed vital for national interests. Enforced cooperation with a suite of new regulations and agreements slowly but steadily restored both order and, importantly, economic growth. Remember, one of the main proponents of this whole thing that we're seeing speak out is Bill Gates. And what is he saying that we need to do before order and economic growth can come back, before we can go and hang out in groups again? What is he saying that we need to do?
For the world at large, normalcy only returns when we've largely vaccinated the entire global population.
Do you see this biometric ID for citizens? And what is Bill Gates saying needs to happen in order for us to get that sort of thing? Not that any of us actually want it. It goes on to say, in the developed world, the presence of so many top-down rules and norms greatly inhibited entrepreneurial activity. Scientists and innovators were often told by governments what research lines to pursue. Isn't that interesting? Do they not want us to pursue the lines of research that would prove their entire narrative was based on lies? Research that would show the truth about this virus? They're going to tell us what we can research. Scientists, wake up, speak out. It goes on to say later on, People seem to be growing weary of so much top-down control and letting leaders and authorities make choices for them. Wherever national interests clashed with individual interests, there was conflict. Sporadic pushback became increasingly organized and coordinated as disaffected youth and people who had seen their status and opportunities slip away, largely in developing countries, incited civil unrest. Even those who liked the stability earlier on began to grow uncomfortable and constrained by so many tight rules and by the strictness of national boundaries. The feeling lingered that sooner or later something would inevitably upset the neat order that the world's governments had worked so hard to establish. Well, I believe that, in fact, this disorder that they are fully admitting is a part of the plan is what they will utilize to come in later and propose the ultimate order that they want to see. The citizen pushback is a part of this very title of this thing that they have created. They know this is going to happen, and they are going to use this to their complete and total advantage. Some of the headlines in Lockstep, it talks about quarantine restricts in-person contact. It also says intercontinental trade hit by pathogen controls. We're already seeing this in the media where they're saying that they're going to have to do that as a result of saving us from the infection rates, right? The infection rates that dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of virologists and people who have done microbiology their entire life are saying this is not even possible. It doesn't matter as long as people believe that it's possible. In the bottom, it talks about the technology in Lockstep, and this is what they really want to bring in as a result of this disorder that they are causing by destroying our very ability to take care of ourselves through our small business. Technology in Lockstep says, the scenarios point to the development of certain kinds of technologies. Technological innovation in Lockstep is largely driven by government issues of national security of health and safety. So you can be sure that when they ask you to take an SHOT, it will be absolutely your duty as a matter of national security and health and safety of everyone around you, just in the same reason that they have caused people to run around with masks for everyone else's safety. Otherwise, you're being a bad person and you need to be turned in by your neighbor, which is also what they are encouraging. Shaped by government's dual desire to control and monitor their citizens. It's all about control. Technology we might see. Scanners using advanced functional magnetic resonance imaging become the norm at airports and other public interests to, get this guys, detect abnormal behavior that might indicate antisocial intent. Even more importantly than understanding, and isn't it interesting that this is like a tidal wave, a tidal wave that comes out of the heart of the zeros and ones that is a representative of technology itself. They make no bones about telling you exactly what they intend to do. While these ultimate plans and ability to use technology to extinguish the dissidents and control who is left seems incomprehensible to those of us listening to a God-given conscience. But the gift in this grand, bold chess move at the hands of the elite is that many more will begin to comprehend the depths of their evil, as well as the fact that a new world order really was their ultimate goal after all. A man named Walter Cronkite was the face of the perception-creating media for almost an entire generation in America, through the Vietnam War, through the murder of JFK, and through putting men on the moon. When he later received his gift of excellence from the World Federal Association, they said this:
World government is the structure necessary for global justice.
Good evening and congratulations, Walter, on receiving the World Federalist Association's Global Governance Award. For more than a generation in America, it wasn't the news until Walter Cronkite told us it was the news. Every night at 6 o'clock, we welcomed you into our living rooms and listened as you explained the complex events of the day. For decades, you've told us the way it is. But tonight, we honor you for fighting for the way it could be.
You, sir, have been a lifelong advocate of this principle, and it is appropriate, therefore, that we present you with this amethyst shield.
First priority of humankind in this difficult era is to establish an effective system of world law that will assure peace with justice among the peoples of all the world. First, we Americans are going to have to yield up some of our sovereignty. That's going to be, to many, a bitter pill. It would take a lot of courage, a lot of faith, a lot of persuasion to them to come along with us on this necessity. Pat Robertson has written in a book a few years ago that we should have a world government, but only when the Messiah arrives. He wrote, any attempt to achieve world order before that time must be the work of the devil. Well, join me. I'm glad to sit here at the right hand of Satan. I'm glad to sit here at the right hand of Satan.
These people admit their allegiance because it is required. And Bill Gates, Microsoft, also admitted theirs when, in the time of all this chaos, they released their promotion of an artist well known to partake in satanic rituals on the day that is known to represent the day Jesus was crucified. God gave us all free will, even to those who are currently misusing it. And it is their God that is seeking to remove your free will from you in the name of peace and safety. But this world is not all there is. There is more, so much more. This place is just a test where you will choose your allegiance. God bless you. I love you. And we'll talk to you soon.